On Sunday, NASCAR went for round 2 with Pocono Raceway. The race started off exactly how New Hampshire finished, with Kevin Harvick leading. But the Stewart-Haas driver did not keep that lead, as Pocono saw Kyle Busch dominate for a while until they tried a new strategy. It backfired, however, but 2 other Joe Gibbs drivers were battling for the lead at the end of the race. Denny Hamlin fought off teammate Erik Jones and the worry of running out of gas and took the checkered flag for the 3rd time this season. Hello and welcome to another edition of Ross Racing on the Richmond Observer. Tonight's show is of course brought to you by Rockingham Dragway. I'm Matt Harrelson. This is of course Russell Parker. So, fuel, teammates, some luck, a ton of skill. All of those things clashed together at the end of this race. So how did Denny Hamlin park his car in the winner's circle?
It was a really long day for a lot of these guys at Pocono, and and the reason why it was so long is because the racing was so good out there that I imagine that I feel like it might have been fun for them, but at the same time probably really hard racing all day long. Probably feels like, oh my gosh, it's going to be forever. So. The Pocono racing was really good this time around versus the first time. So I don't know. They added some new traction onto some of the turns called PJ1, and it helps cars get around the track a lot better. So maybe that was something that helped out Hamlin. Just the pack racing was so good that it helped out a lot. But Hamlin kind of been up. He was kind of up front for the most part of the day. He just kept a clean nose all race long, and him and his crew chief, which by the way is his first season with Denny Hamlin, and now his 3rd win of the season. So Hamlin and his crew chief are just getting it done, and they know where to go to. Obviously Hamlin is not the forefront driver for Joe Gibbs. That'd probably be Kyle Busch, with Truex probably right there next to him. But Hamlin is definitely becoming his own driver this season for sure, and really just stepping it up. Of course, they did miscalculate their fuel mileage because they had enough at the end for the burnouts.
Yeah.
But overall, Hamlin had a really solid race all day, and just was in the perfect spot.
Well, we all know of the dominance that Joe Gibbs Racing has had so far this season with 3 of their drivers. Erik Jones took 2nd. Obviously, he is racing to not just win, but for his future in the 20 car, which we've talked about quite a bit on this show. After Hamlin's win, the coach himself joined his driver in the media center and was asked about Jones' future. Let's take a look.
Yeah, I know. I want to say to everybody, it's so hard putting everything together. And I know people get frustrated because you haven't made a decision yet on some things. But I just say this, there's sponsors involved, there's so many relationships involved, and you're trying to go through all that and work it all out. And so, I think that's part of Erik's world. It doesn't go easy sometimes, and you're working. He knows. I keep him updated. We do. He knows we're working as hard as we can. So hopefully it'll be one of those things we get put in place here pretty quick.
So, Russell, it does seem like Gibbs wants to keep Jones, but perhaps it's the sponsors who are trying to move things around. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a really interesting take on the sport because, usually you would think a driver's connected to the sponsor, not the team. And I feel like Gibbs has kind of been this way before in the past anyways, because there was some things going with Dylan Suarez and Carl Edwards when they were in that transition that had something to do with Aris and a few other sponsors during that time. And of course, though, I know that there's been some differences in that 20 car specifically on sponsorship. So it's kind of been an interesting take on the way sponsors are done in NASCAR. But Jones, I feel like Gibbs definitely wants to keep him there. And there's a little bit more to the interview that says he definitely does want to stay there. And it could just be something that he's saying just to give good credit. But Gibbs has been really active with his drivers, proactive with his drivers before races and off the track. He's always been there on a personal level with his drivers. You can see that with him. So I think that he actually does generally want to see him there, but unfortunately there's just not enough space. And so it's kind of what do you do in this situation, because you love this driver, but you also love this driver over here, which is Christopher Bell, of course, who we're talking about, who could take that ride. And, Gibbs, he's got to think about his business, but that's probably where the sponsors come in to think about that for him. Just kind of forces his hand to make a decision on that.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think that sponsors are perhaps too involved with these decisions nowadays? And I mean, like, should sponsors follow the driver or the team?
There has been instances where sponsors do follow the drivers in the past. Kurt Busch, for example, he took Monster Energy with him from Stewart-Haas Racing over to Chip Ganassi Racing in this previous season up to now. So it does happen for some drivers. And there are some teams out there that do stick with sponsors only. You just kind of look at Exalta for Hendrick Motorsports. Now, they started off, they were originally DuPont with Jeff Gordon, and they had a name changeover and all that. But they're still driving with other teams in the Hendrick Motorsports camp. So it's always been a bit of a transition type of thing where a sponsor sticks around. And I guess it helps out to have a sponsor be involved through the team because you're always guaranteed to have that sponsor, but at the same time, that sponsor is probably dictating who is in that ride representing them. And I don't know, maybe there's some positives to it. You're guaranteed that sponsorship some way or another, but at the same time, it might cost you a ride like it could potentially do now. So I think there's some positives and negatives to it, but I don't know.
Do you think that maybe it's, as we've talked about before on the show, a case of the have and the have-nots? If you're someone who is in the upper echelon of the sport, you can, I don't want to say have your pick of sponsorships, but you also have the ability to kind of, like you said, take them with you. Is that something we're seeing?
Yeah, I think that's kind of what we're seeing, but I feel like that I'm not entirely sure there's different sponsors throughout the week on the cars,
right.
But Erik Jones's guys, they may be feeling like that. Erik Jones can represent them bigger in the sport than Erik Jones is, just because of the way he's done what Bell is doing in the Xfinity Series. So it makes a sponsor think, what's going to be the best for us, and I think that might be some pushing there on Joe Gibbs.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, for the sponsors, it's all about that dollar, so it makes sense. Well, Erik Jones is not the only driver who's looking to make some changes to his win column. Jimmie Johnson, who we spoke about last week, and his dire need to make the playoffs this season. Now the driver has a new crew chief this week at Watkins Glen. The guy to now overlook the pit box is Cliff Daniels, and will be replacing Kevin Meendering, who had taken the role this year after Chad Knaus left for the 24 car. So, Russell, is this a good move for the 7-time champ?
I feel like it is. Cliff Daniels, he has a kind of similar style to Chad Knaus. So he also worked on Jimmie's car in 2016, same year he won his 7th championship. They've got a close relationship off the track, so I feel like that Daniels will be a good fit for Jimmie moving forward. And I know people are still saying that this is going to be Jimmie's last year. He's going to retire very soon. But if they're still making changes to how things are done with him, I don't think he's done, because they want to find a solution to get back out there and win races. And I don't think no one's more determined to win a race right now than Jimmie is. He just needs to find the right players, the right cards for his hand. Nothing against Meendering. He's done a fantastic job being on that crew chief. I guess maybe it might have been a short notice for him to be on that crew chief. I can't remember when the transition was, but to take over after Chad Knaus is pretty hard to do, I feel like, for someone, and no matter who it is.
Yeah.
So he's done a great job holding that down, and I feel like it's going to continue to build better for Jimmie as we move along. We've seen drivers have these type of slumps before in the past. Heck, even Earnhardt had these slumps late in his career, but he made a comeback himself. So I think Jimmie's going to want to make a comeback himself and really prove it. And I think having Daniels in his corner is certainly going to do that.
All right. Well, we've talked about some guys on the Joe Gibbs racing team. Let's get in the groove. Anybody from Joe Gibbs in the groove this week?
I have actually not quite, but I do have a Hendrick driver. That is William Byron. He started 31st at Pocono and finished 4th.
Wow.
That's a really big jump there for him. In the Xfinity Series, they raced at Iowa this past weekend. John Hunter Nemechek, he started 14th, finished 3rd. And Christian Eakes in the Truck Series raced at Pocono. Started 13th, finished 4th. He's not a guy you never really hear about. I'm not sure if I've heard his name in NASCAR before. It really stuck out to me, and he put on a great show there.
All right. While Hendrick Motorsports and the rest of NASCAR is gearing up for Watkins Glen this week, Charlotte Motor Speedway is preparing for the Bank of America Roval 400, something you and I were able to go visit. Now, there is a massive change to the layout for this season. The backstretch is currently in the process of being widened. Now, they invited Bubba Wallace to the track to help out with the construction because he would know that spot better than anyone else, given what happened last season. Let's take a look.
It's hard to see it right now since it's under construction, that's for sure. But seeing kind of the visual of it and seeing it on paper, I think it'll give us a little bit better option to come through here and attack a little bit harder. We're definitely going to be slowing down a little bit more than what we were last year. And I think the biggest thing, we have runoff room now, and we didn't have that until after I made runoff room and they decided to move the wall back. So I led by example, unfortunately, for my team. But all in all, I think it was an exciting race, not only for the fans, but for the sport. You know, something new, and what Marcus and his staff has done here at Charlotte for the sport of NASCAR, and changing up the October weekend, giving everybody something new.
Where we're standing now was the area of the backstretch chicane where a lot of drivers had some challenges. Now, some drivers like Austin Dillon and Erik Jones and Bubba Wallace, who was here today, tried to widen it on their own. But we decided, in taking a look at what last year's race was all about, is widening on our own. And so today we're actually widening the chicane, changing the configuration, making it a harder left and right-hand turn as you go in, and then a wider exit. We're actually taking it from 32 feet to 54 feet. Great passing zone, great area for side-by-side racing, which is what we all want. And then we believe that will set the drivers up for some great passing on the front stretch chicane. So all in all, this is a great bit. It's what's interesting, when people come out here and see this for the first time, it's like, wow, this is serious. I mean, you guys are making a serious investment in changing the racing and making the racing better, and we believe so. Bubba's a great sport. We put Bubba in the back of a F-15, and now we put him on a steamroller and on a grader. He understands it. He's such a great sport. And it's like I talk about, some drivers try to widen it, and he sheepishly raised his hand. I mean, that's the kind of guy he is, and he understands that we're doing what we can to make the racing better for them.
So, Russell, do you think that this is a good move on Charlotte to make the change?
Yeah, that chicane was really, really tight last season.
Yes, it was.
And really, really fast. You know how fast I dogged it through there, just at 60 miles per hour, and it was still intense doing that. These guys are going in over 100 miles per hour, and they're hitting the wall. As you're seeing some highlights right now, Bubba Wallace, one of those guys who just smacked the mess out of it last season, tore up his car. I think with this widening out and making it like a more sharper turn, forcing these drivers to brake and get in on the brake a lot more and have a really sharp turn to get back out of it. But they got to know to gas it back out of there so they can pick up speed going into turn the ovals 3 and 4 turns. So I think it's a good move for Charlotte that they're still continuing to try out this Roval. The Roval was successful, very successful last year. In fact, I believe the ticket prices for that race has doubled on our seats. So,
of course.
This is probably the best seats in the house.
Yeah.
And I think that shows that the demand is high for this race again. And it just feels like that they're looking for ways to improve it. They're listening to the feedback from drivers and probably from the fans as well on what they can do to improve it. And this is one that definitely needed an improvement. And so props to Charlotte on fixing this.
Yeah, you and I definitely had 2 of the best seats in the house, especially for that sharp turn you're talking about. So on to more left and right turns. NASCAR is going to New York this weekend for the race at Watkins Glen International. Russell, what are we expecting to see up north?
Yeah, well, in addition to the left and rights, we got some up and down hill. We got the carousel. We've got a bus stop involved. We've got a lot of high speed. This is a really fast road course. There's a really nice part where you can just accelerate really fast before you get into that bus stop, and I think that you're going to see a lot of high action out of this one. It's particularly with the drivers of Denny Hamlin, Chase Elliott, Kyle Busch, and Brad Keselowski, Joey Logano. Those are you guys you're going to be watching for. Last year they put on a heck of a show where Chase Elliott got his first victory ever, and I think you're going to see some more really awesome moments coming up this Sunday. I've always loved Watkins Glen. It's always had some great racing down there, and I look forward to seeing how much more we can get this weekend.
Well, normally the Cup Series would be the highlight of the week, but this week the Truck Series will be front and center for many, as tonight they'll be hitting the dirt track at Eldora. Now, it's the only race out of the season where one of NASCAR's top national series slings mud and in a local short track style race.
Yeah, the Mud Slumber Classic is coming up tonight. I think it's at 9 o'clock, and it's going to be a heck of a show. They've put on some really awesome racing here in the past. I think it started up in, I want to say 2015. It's been going since they started doing this. But there hasn't been, I don't believe there has been a 2-time winner at this track, so it's going to be very interesting to see if that can even happen this time. With the Truck Series playoffs, only got 2 races left before they start. This is going to be kind of, I want to say this is kind of like a wild card race, but with Matt Crafton and Grant Enfinger, and like those guys who are kind of not really safe, but they can, I guess you can call them safe. One of them's points leader, the other one's not safe. But I feel like those 2 drivers are going to be probably your top guys to watch out for this race. But at the same time, Stuart Friesen probably comes in as another main guy. Overall, those 3 are going to be really battling it very hard for this race to make up as many points as possible to build up their point stacks. Of course, the guys who already have playoff wins to make it into the playoffs, like Ross Chastain, those guys are going to be wanting to get some extra bonus points. It's going to be a heck of a race. And with it being on dirt, you never know what you're going to get out of it because anybody's game is on this one.
All right, well, let's head from New York back here to Richmond County and into the Rock Block. Of course, talking about everything going on at Rockingham Dragway. And just like this weekend, always something going on. Continuing is the MXA Street Drags Test and Tune. Again, that's going to continue on Saturday, run until November. So if you want to get involved with it, you still got plenty of time. Again, I'm going to read some of these rules in case you're watching. You haven't joined, you want to get in on the action. Tech cards must be filled out completely with your correct car number. If more than one driver, each driver must purchase a tech card. Now, after your tech card is purchased, if you want to actually have to get a proper wristband, of course, you can do that out there as well. Helmets are again regulated by the sanctioning organizations, and they call for helmets if your vehicle runs quicker than 13.99 in the quarter mile. And motorcycle riders, if you're heading out there on 2 wheels, must wear full leathers if running faster than 120 miles per hour in this quarter. Helmets, gloves, leather shoes above the ankle, all that required if you're riding a bike. And again, if you need any more information, absolutely head to rockinghamdragway.com. Gates will open up at 4 p.m. and they'll be running all night until 11. So again, that's the Rock Block, as always brought to you by Rockingham Dragway. So before we move on to the winter predictions, we wanted to give a shout out to Ellerby native Jake Vuncannon. He's the driver of the number 5 City of Rockingham / Richmond County Tourism / Diffenbach GM Superstore Chevrolet. Talking about sponsorships. He drives in the late model races at Dillon Motor Speedway in South Carolina. And this past weekend, he took the checkered flag after starting on the pole and led every single lap in the race. So, of course, big congratulations are in order for him and his team. And a quick shout out to Stefan Parsons, the cousin of Raider tennis coach Keith Parsons. In just his second race in the Xfinity Series, he nabbed 21st at Iowa in the 99 car.
That's awesome, man. It's really cool to see some local guys racing. A lot of people think of Rockingham Speedway, sure, Rockingham Dragway racing, but we do have some local racers around here and some big names out of it. Vuncannon, he just drove the wheels off that car. Unfortunately, I was going to try to make a trip down there. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it, but they raced out there like twice a month. So the previous race out there, he finished second. So he's definitely got this track down pat. And Stefan Parsons, his second race ever in the Xfinity Series, and getting almost a top 20 out of that. And coming out from, he started at Daytona as a mechanic, came into that race as a mechanic, and he ended up finishing 12th, and now he's racing again. So he's definitely got some opportunities opening up for him after that Daytona race.
Absolutely. And again, I don't care what level you're at, to lead the entire race, all the laps, and then come in first, that's difficult to do. Yeah. So, all right, just like we do every other show before we end, let's get some predictions.
For Watkins Glen, I'm going to take Brad Keselowski. He hasn't won here yet. He's having a bit of a slump since Martinsville way back in May. So way back when. It's been so long. But Brad Keselowski, I think he's going to get the job done at Watkins Glen to break his little losing streak and move on and get another win. I believe it'd be his 4th. And then for Eldora, I am going to go with, that's a really tough one because, like I said, anything can happen out there. I'm going to go with Matt Crafton. I think that he can get the job done at this race, and I feel like he's going to want him a solid win. If I'm not mistaken, he actually has not won since Eldora 2 years ago, so it'll be a big win for him if he can get it done tonight.
All right, you heard it here first. Place your bets on all things racing, as Russell is telling you who's going to take the checkered flag this weekend. And that is going to do it for another edition of Ross Racing, just like the rest, brought to you by Rockingham Dragway and RockinghamDragway.com. That is Russell Parker. I'm Matt Harrelson. We'll see you right back here another week on the track. More Ross Racing. Have a great week.